Welcome, everybody, to the Sentinel Report. I am your host, Alex Newman. It's a great honor and pleasure to be with you today. We're doing a special episode this week because we just have so much stuff, so much in the news, so many amazing people to share with you. So we're going to do a special episode for today. It is September 24th, 2025. And we're going to start, like we always do, with a word from the Word. This comes out of 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 15. The Bible reads, "But in your hearts revere Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. But do this with gentleness and respect." And folks, that is a really appropriate verse for today. I love that verse. I've loved that verse for years. But one guy who really got it was Charlie Kirk. I mean, this guy was going on to college campuses, being ruthlessly attacked and mocked and called a Nazi and a fascist and every nasty thing. And he always found a way to respond gently, often with actual Bible verses, chapter and verse. And I think a lot of people came to know the Lord as a result of that. And as we're seeing in the aftermath, God is doing something really, really special here. Now, before we get into the news, we're going to bring our friend Andrew Muller on, Chief of Operations here at Liberty Sentinel Media, also a contributor to the New American. But I want to start with a word from our sponsors, our good friends over at Victory Nutrition International. They've got some really great products, folks. I'm using them every day now. This is one that I especially love. It's called Perform Light. It's a whole collection of different natural things. You've got black currant extract, you've got Brussels sprout concentrate, you've got kale concentrate, and for one, it helps you stay hydrated, and for two, it gives you a bunch of nutrients that you need. They also have one called Trim Rocks that I just love. It's like fun and fizzy, and yet it helps your metabolism. It helps you deal properly with energy, and you just pop it in your mouth. It's absolutely amazing. And if you go use our promo code Newman20 at vni.life/Newman, you're going to get 20% off on your orders. Go check it out, vni.life/Newman. That's vni.life/Newman, and use that promo code Newman20. Now, just this week, Donald Trump broke the record for the longest speech at the UN General Assembly. I like to call it the Dictators Club. And before we get to those clips, welcome to the program, Andrew. Thanks very much for joining us.
Oh, always a pleasure to be here, Alex, especially after Trump absolutely roasted the UN. So I'm looking forward to reviewing that.
Yeah, it was such a joyous occasion for those of us who have been calling out the UN for so long. He talked about the mass migration scam and how the UN was orchestrating that. He talked about the climate con job, the biggest con in history. He talked about so much that was just absolutely critical. But let's start with his comments about how the UN was weaponizing mass immigration against the West.
Not solving the problems it should too often. It's actually creating new problems for us to solve. The best example is the number one political issue of our time, the crisis of uncontrolled migration. It's uncontrolled. Your countries are being ruined. The United Nations is funding an assault on Western countries and their borders. In 2024, the UN budgeted $372 million in cash assistance to support an estimated 624,000 migrants journeying into the United States. Think of that. The UN is supporting people that are illegally coming into the United States, and then we have to get them out. The UN also provided food, shelter, transportation, and debit cards to illegal aliens. Can you believe that? On the way to infiltrate our southern border. Millions of people came through that southern border. Just a year ago, millions and millions of people were pouring in, 25 million altogether over the 4 years of the incompetent Biden administration. And now we have it stopped, totally stopped. In fact, they're not even coming anymore because they know they can't get through. But what took place is totally unacceptable. The UN is supposed to stop invasions, not create them and not finance them. In the United States, we reject the idea that mass numbers of people from foreign lands can be permitted to travel halfway around the world, trample our borders, violate our sovereignty, cause unmitigated crime, and deplete our social safety net. We have reasserted that America belongs to the American people, and I encourage all countries to take their own stand in defense of their citizens as well. You have to do that because I see it. I'm not mentioning names. I see it, and I can call every single one of them out. You're destroying your countries. They're being destroyed. Europe is in serious trouble. They've been invaded by a force of illegal aliens like nobody's ever seen before. Illegal aliens are pouring into Europe. Nobody is ever, and nobody's doing anything to change it, to get them out. It's not sustainable. And because they choose to be politically correct, they're doing just absolutely nothing about it. And I have to say, I look at London, where you have a terrible mayor, terrible, terrible mayor. And it's been so changed, so changed. Now they want to go to Sharia law. But you're in a different country. You can't do that. Both the immigration and their suicidal energy ideas will be the death of Western Europe if something is not done immediately. This cannot be sustained. What makes the world so beautiful is that each country is unique. But to stay this way, every sovereign nation must have the right to control their own borders. You have the right to control your borders, as we do now, and to limit the sheer numbers of migrants entering their countries and paid for by the people of that nation that were there and that built that particular nation at the time. They put their blood, sweat, tears, money into that country, and now they're being ruined. Proud nations must be allowed to protect their communities and prevent their societies from being overwhelmed by people they have never seen before, with different customs, religions, with different everything. Where migrants have violated laws, lodged false asylum claims, or claimed refugee status for illegitimate reasons, they should, in many cases, be immediately sent home.
Wow. I mean, that was powerful stuff. And he didn't mention it, but aiding and abetting illegal immigration is a federal crime. I think the UN would like to hide behind diplomatic immunity. And as somebody who has spent much of the last 2 decades in Europe, living in 4 different European countries, I can say that what he just described is absolutely true. The native populations are now in the minority in Frankfurt, in Malmo, in Brussels, in London, in Amsterdam, and the list goes on and on and on. And of course, the UN is orchestrating this for reasons that they themselves have described, like Peter Sutherland, UN Migrations are talking about how we need to get rid of old shibboleths and historic memories of our own countries and borders and recognize that we're all one human family, which of course means we'll all be ruled by the one global government. Andrew, what do you make of that? I mean, you could tell a lot of those people in the audience knew he was telling the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really hard to overstate the significance of Trump going to the UN General Assembly and saying these things in front of all these elitists in the dictator club, as you called it. Because you and I have been there, Alex. We listen to these people speak, and they never say anything critical or shocking unless it's theatrical to move the needle in their current political radical direction. So for Trump to come to give the longest speech ever after the teleprompter broke and the escalator broke when he got there, and he used that to kind of riff on the failure and incompetence of the UN, which is funny, is very significant. And because the United States media very seldom pays attention to what goes on at the United Nations by design. But yesterday, of course, it was an exception because the president came and spoke. So for him to drop truth bombs like this and to say the UN was spending millions of dollars to illegally funnel over 600,000 migrants into the United States is very significant because it shows the American people that the UN, one, doesn't care about our sovereignty and our country, which is very true, but they're actively working against the will of the people, which was articulated in November of 2024 in the election, which the key issue was stopping mass migration. And the United Nations actively worked to subvert the American people's will on that issue. Now, thankfully, we've had about 2 million deportations in the last 260 days, 1.6 million being self-deportations, 400,000 being from ICE. But this is huge, and this should be, Alex, the hopefully awakening point for people to recognize that not only does the UN not care about us, but they actively work to subvert America, our laws, our sovereignty, and our elections and everything. And I think Trump pointing that out was a great step in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope we get much more of that. He's got, 3 more opportunities to go poke him in the eye, so I hope he takes advantage. And, I was with Congressman Chip Roy over the weekend. We had a big event at the Fredericksburg Tea Party, and I gave the keynote talk there. And one of my big points was that the UN, this evil globalist institution, was trying to usurp our sovereignty. And we brought Chip Roy up on the stage. We spent about half an hour chatting. And Chip Roy, of course, is the chief sponsor in the House of Representatives of the Defund Act, the Disengaging Entirely from the United Nations Debacle Act. And my first question to him when he came up on stage was, why do we need that? And it was just home run after home run. This and many other issues are why, of course, we need to get out of the UN. So, folks, if you are interested in this issue, you may think about calling your congressman. Find out if he or she is a co-sponsor on this legislation, and if not, maybe find out why not, because this is a hugely significant bill. And with Trump in the White House, we may have the first opportunity in my lifetime to really move this through. Andrew, you clipped out a few other really significant segments. One involved wars. You and I were just in Azerbaijan less than a year ago, and Trump managed to bring peace there. He got the Azerbaijanis and the Armenians to stop. The Azerbaijanis, of course, were ruthlessly terrorizing and persecuting and oppressing the Christians of Armenia. But let's roll Donald Trump's clip on this issue.
I ended 7 wars, and in all cases they were raging with countless thousands of people being killed. This includes Cambodia and Thailand, Kosovo and Serbia, the Congo and Rwanda, a vicious, violent war that was, Pakistan and India, Israel and Iran, Egypt and Ethiopia, and Armenia and Azerbaijan. It included all of them. No president or prime minister, and for that matter, no other country has ever done anything close to that. And I did it in just 7 months. Never happened before. There's never been anything like that. I'm very honored to have done it. It's too bad that I had to do these things instead of the United Nations doing them. And sadly, in all cases, the United Nations did not even try to help in any of them. I ended 7 wars, dealt with the leaders of each and every one of these countries, and never even received a phone call from the United Nations offering to help in finalizing the deal. All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle. If the First Lady wasn't in great shape, she would have fallen. But she's in great shape. We're both in good shape. We both stood. And then a teleprompter that didn't work. These are the 2 things I got from the United Nations, a bad escalator and a bad teleprompter. Thank you very much. And by the way, it's working now. It just went on. Thank you. I think I should just do it the other way. It's easier. Thank you very much.
Oh man, that was funny. And what struck me here is the whole raison d'être, French for reason for being, of the United Abominations is supposedly keeping the peace. And here Donald Trump is literally exposing the fact that they are not even doing the one thing that they were put in charge of, which was trying to keep the peace. And so what is the UN useful for? And I actually made a similar point to what Donald Trump just did. I was at the UN Conference on Sustainable Development in 2012 in Rio de Janeiro, and the whole conference was a giant dumpster fire. Like they couldn't have anything organized. Nothing was working. And I wrote an article about it in the New American. Like they can't even run a conference, and they want to run the lives of everybody on the planet. This is preposterous. Andrew, what do you make of his comments on the UN's being uninvolved in peace?
Well, Trump is averaging solving a war every month, which is kind of remarkable. And I'm a non-interventionist, Alex. I don't think the United States should be involved in any of these wars, but there is an argument to make that the United States has been so involved that, maybe a little diplomacy to resolve a couple of these things that we foolishly began could be necessary. And Trump has been very successful in using diplomacy, using his influence to solve these wars. And I'm actually going to disagree with the president, even though I know he was joking. I am glad that the UN didn't call him, and I'm glad that the UN didn't get involved, because if they did, it would have gotten worse. And the UN brags that their whole purpose, of course, after being created in the light of World War II, was that they don't want another world war. Well, that has not happened, but we've also had a whole bunch of wars that have arguably been more damaging. You think of Vietnam, you think of Korea, you think of the war on terror, Afghanistan, Iraq, all these things that have gone on have happened under the so-called leadership and responsibility of the United Nations. So they do the opposite of what they want to do. And then when somebody like Donald Trump comes along and says, hey, let's have a little bit more of a non-interventionist approach, let's use diplomacy instead of war to solve conflict, they don't care. They don't want to be involved in that because it doesn't fit the agenda. They need war, they being the UN, they need war, they need conflict, so they can send in their little minions and they can expand their power and they can have influence. So they need the war, they need the conflict to continue the grift. And when Donald Trump comes in and actually says, hey, I'm going to solve this through diplomacy, through phone calls, through visits, they have no interest in that. And that is very telling, Alex, because it shows that these people don't care about actually solving war. They care about perpetuating war so that they can come in as the so-called heroes and institute a global order to make peace. So this was very significant for Trump to call that out. And I'm glad that the UN, frankly, was not involved in any of these negotiations, because they would have by far made it worse tenfold.
Yeah, they always do. Man, there's so much more to cover, and we are down to very few minutes left here. Let's go to clip number 3, where he's talking about the climate scam.
In 1982, the executive director of the United Nations Environmental Program predicted that by the year 2000, climate change would cause a global catastrophe. He said that it will be irreversible, as any nuclear holocaust would be. This is what they said at the United Nations. What happened? Here we are. Another UN official stated in 1989 that within a decade, entire nations could be wiped off the map by global warming. Not happening. You know, it used to be global cooling. If you look back years ago in the 1920s and the 1930s, they said, global cooling will kill the world. We have to do something. Then they said global warming will kill the world, but then it started getting cooler, so now they could just call it climate change, because that way they can't miss. It's climate change. Because if it goes higher or lower, whatever the hell happens, is climate change. It's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world, in my opinion.
The greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world. And of course, I agree 100%. We're going to be down at the UN Climate Summit in Brazil in just a couple of months. So folks, we'll be covering that for the New American. Get over to newamerican.com and follow our coverage there. And I want to, before we have to go to break, I want to talk about something really significant. I got a tip from a source in the UN about a new office that's being set up in The Hague by the UN Development Program that apparently is to, quote unquote, innovate for justice, but far more sinister, is actually looking at ways to build a case against Donald Trump. And there are some very shady characters involved here. Ghada Fatih Wali, Maher Nasser, Filippo Grandi, the UN refugee chief, and quite a few of Antonio Guterres' personal staff. So very, very troubling there, folks. We'll keep our eyes on this. Of course, the U.S. government has never consented to the Rome Statute that created the International Kangaroo Criminal Court, but neither did the Israelis. And now this kangaroo court is going after their prime minister and their minister of defense. So something fishy is going on here, folks, and we need to watch it very carefully. Also, we had Google committing to reinstate everybody that got banned from YouTube after they admitted publicly, as part of a congressional probe, that they were responding to pressure from the Biden regime. Of course, we at the New American got our YouTube channel banned. They did return it recently, although I don't know how much effort and resources we're going to put into building that up. But Representative Jim Jordan, who chairs the committee, said, due to our oversight efforts, Google commits to offer all creators previously kicked off YouTube due to political speech violations to return to the platform. And I also want to touch on this real quick. Charlie Kirk, just days before he died, pledged to put his full focus on the Chinese communist takeover of South Korea. This is from his good friend and mentor, Bill Federer. I spoke with him last week. Check this out.
At his church, I spoke at his church. just 2 weeks ago. And we're with him. Then we're with Charlie and him. And Charlie, the interpreters, telling the story back and forth. And Charlie tells Pastor Sun Hyung Bo, if they arrest you, I personally will call President Donald Trump, and I will use my podcast and let everybody in America know about how in South Korea, the government is doing this political weaponization against Bible-believing Christians. And Charlie was talking to his staff, says, we got one more event with students in Utah, and then I'm going to put my full focus to exposing this CCP infiltration of the politics in South Korea.
Wow.
And obviously,
amazing.
He got shot, and that never happened. I will always think that there's some deep state interests that were behind this assassination. I don't know if we'll ever find the bottom of it, but
I think the same thing, Bill. Yeah, maybe we'll never know, but it's important for all of this to be on the table. Before we go to break, folks, RFK now says Tylenol doesn't just have links to autism, but ADD and liver toxicity in children. Peter McCullough has released his response to this, and he says the pathway to developmental regression begins with vaccines, not acetaminophen. Tylenol is used for fever control for over 60 years, and I agree, folks. I don't think Tylenol is the real culprit. And RFK Jr. did reveal that the CDC found that a vaccine's autism risk was higher than smoking is for lung cancer, and the CDC hid the findings. I want you to see this real quick before we go to break.
In 1999, CDC was also alarmed by the same thing that you described with the parents. So they decided to do an internal study of their own database, which is called the Vaccine Safety Data Link. It's the medical records, including the vaccination records, of 10 million kids from the 10 biggest HMOs. So it's all the cumulative medical records from all those HMOs, and they're all housed in one place. And they said, let's see if these mercury vaccines are causing autism. So they looked at one vaccine. They can look at every vaccine record, and then they can look at your medical claims to see if you had seizure disorders or allergies, or if you have an autism diagnosis. They can do a cluster analysis, and they can look for associations. So they looked at the hepatitis B vaccine, which is loaded with mercury, during the first 30 days of life. They looked at kids who got it during the first 30 days. They compared them to kids who did not get it during the first 30 days, who got it later or didn't get it at all. And here's what they found. The relative risk of smoking a pack of cigarettes a day for 20 years and lung cancer is 10. This was 11.35. They knew.
Is that because of thimerosal?
Was causing from thimerosal. This is what the story that got me involved.
Amazing stuff, folks. We need to be talking about these things. We need to stop the fake media from distracting us. We're going to go to break. We've got some very special guests coming up here. We have Seth Gruber, one of the leaders in the world of biblical investing, is going to share with us a huge victory they had against Costco selling abortion pills and much more. Stay tuned right here on the Sentinel Report.
Hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce the next generation of energy drinks, Rev 7. It has no sugar and no caffeine. Instead, Rev 7 uses GoBHB. GoBHB is one of the body's primary ketones, and it provides the most efficient and clean fuel that your body needs. It also helps you stay energized all day with no crashes. Not only that, it produces 3 times more brain energy than sugar, which helps boost your memory, focus, and mental sharpness. It also helps reduce stress and helps balance your mood. Rev 7 does all that while being the best tasting energy drink ever. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% today. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7. For a limited time, you get our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. I drink Rev 7 every day, and I absolutely love it, and so will you.
Welcome back to the Sentinel Report. Alex Newman, your host here. Folks, we're all still mourning the death of Charlie Kirk, and in the aftermath, I reached out to a handful of people who I knew were close to him, worked with him over the years. We talked to Bill Federer, and we also have today Seth Gruber. He was a friend of Charlie's. They worked together on a lot of different projects. He's been on the program before. He is a warrior, maybe the nation's preeminent warrior on behalf of the unborn. He's one of the few who's just willing to tell it like it is. He's actually the son of a pregnancy resource center director, so he was helping save unborn children from abortion before he was even born. He's been a vocal defender of preborn babies ever since. He is the founder of the White Rose Resistance, an incredible national organization working to stop abortion in this country. He just released earlier this year, I believe, or maybe it was last year. We had him on the program to discuss it. The 1916 Project, which if you haven't seen that yet, it is essential that you go watch this. It's an incredible film. I can't say enough good things about it. It's the real story of Margaret Sanger and the people who brought abortion to our country and who they really were. They were racist. They were eugenicists. They were vile revolutionaries in every sense. Seth, welcome to the program. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks, Alex. Appreciate you.
Absolutely. You know, I got a lot of emails even just over the last few days from people, oh, you know, Christians don't get involved in politics. And I just think, man, you must not have heard of Moses or Elijah or Daniel or Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Or I mean, it just goes on and on. I can't fathom it. And the same thought came into my mind that you just articulated. I was debating this guy who was haranguing me on Twitter about Christianity and politics. And I thought, man, like, this is something Satan would say. Like, Christians should get out of the public square and let the God haters take over everything. Like, what could go wrong? Right? Yeah. It's frankly incredible.
Brilliantly said, yeah.
Seth, we're seeing something really interesting. You know, even here in my little beach town, we've had a lot of people coming together from across the political spectrum and singing Amazing Grace. Our local, you know, newspaper is behaving nicely to Christians and conservatives. Suddenly, last place I lived before coming back to America was Stockholm, Sweden, one of the most godless places in the world. We just got some videos from Stockholm where people are coming together and singing hymns in honor of Charlie Kirk. Something seems to be happening, at least from my perspective. Do you see this? Do you think we may be seeing some hints of a revival, of an awakening? And what do we do to encourage that and prevent those who would like to stop it from succeeding?
Alexander Pope said, all nature is but art unknown to thee, all chance direction which thou canst not see. And there's clearly something going on in the heavenlies in the last 7 days, Alex. It's painful to have seen how many people routinely attacked Charlie with the authority of their pulpit. How many pastors who wanted nothing to do with even supporting or honoring a man like Charlie. All the pastors who refused to even say his name this last Sunday, to even acknowledge that a Christian was martyred and assassinated for holding the same views that probably most of your congregation holds as well.
Yeah.
And Charlie was routinely attacked. I know what that's like, but he was attacked on a way larger scale. And it was always, you know, well, Charlie's just a MAGA cult, right? He's just MAGA, right? He prostituted his faith to a political ideology. He cared more about honoring Trump than honoring Jesus. Like all these stupid things that were always said about him. And that's not new, right, for Christians who step into the public arena, into the political fight, because we somehow, thanks to, I don't know, maybe the fundamentalist modernist split of the early 20th century, certainly thanks to people like, you know, Rick Warren and Tim Keller. I'm sorry, like we just need to say this. Like Tim Keller probably shifted the Overton window further left in American evangelicalism than any other person that I know of. To make it like spiritually and morally acceptable for Christians to opt out of the political fight, or even to be registered Democrats, as Tim Keller was until his death in the state of New York, and voting for the trans the kids, kill the babies mob, because, you know, they thought, well, the Democrat Party does better on loving the poor or whatever. Like there's been lots of people who have been attacked by Christians living in this cloud of evangelical political bifurcation. We just do Jesus at our church because Jesus is neither left nor right. And we have lots of Democrats in our churches and lots of Republicans in our churches, and they all feel that their party shows different extensions of justice that are representative of the kingdom of God, or what, you know, whatever freaking like Matt Chandler said to Lecrae last year on his show. One of the most asinine statements I've ever heard. Alex, what did he say? That's right. Still stay away from Matt Chandler. What did he say? He said, the left wants the kingdom, but not the king. And the right wants the king, but not the kingdom.
Oh.
Wow. Now let me take another hit of my Hunter Biden blunt. Like, what the hell does that even mean, Alex? Like, and Matt Chandler says that, and Lecrae goes, that's good. That'll preach. What the heck does that? Okay, I didn't know, Alex, that the right wants the king, but not the kingdom. So conservatives don't want the kingdom, but the left wants the kingdom, but not the king. I didn't realize that chopping the penises off of 13-year-olds was the kingdom of God. I'm sorry, I didn't realize that. I didn't know slaughtering infants who survived botched abortions on the medical table was the kingdom of God. That sounds like the kingdom of Herod, something that Jesus was very familiar with as an infant. What kind of asinine statement is that? And that's from Matt Chandler, who's still, I think, a predominant presence in the Acts 29 network. Okay, that's just an example, Alex. Obviously, I'm like very angry at how my murdered friend is being treated. But like, that's a representation of a dominant mindset in evangelicalism, that this is the kingdom, this is Jesus stuff we do, but politics has nothing to do with that. In fact, you're actually gonna shove people away from Christ if you get political. And so what did Charlie do, Alex? He literally ignored, at 18 years old, he founds Turning Point USA. He decides to ignore all of the MDiv, theological PhD wisdom of Rick Warren, of Tim Keller, of David French and David Platt and Matt Chandler and Russell Moore and Ed Stetzer and Christianity Today and the Gospel Coalition. He did the absolute opposite, Alex, of everything that we were told by our evangelical betters who are really smart and are going to help disciple us. And what was the result of him ignoring all of our institutional, managerial, evangelical class? What was the result of that?
Millions of young people.
His life and death is drawing hundreds of thousands and millions of people to Jesus, because somehow Jesus used this happy warrior. Charlie was a happy warrior, Alex. Everyone saw this. Anytime some wild, Joseph multi-technicolored coat of hair weirdo would come up to ask him a question and be nasty, he would return with smiles. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to see the clips from when Charlie was 22 for the people who get mad about that. I was an absolute ass to people at 22 when I was debating abortion as well. Mm. For the last 6 years, Charlie was this happy, beautiful warrior to everyone he spoke to who hated his guts. And he unapologetically weaved the gospel into everything. There was never an answer on or issue or debate or policy debate where Charlie didn't bring it back to the gospel or to a Christian worldview. He was like Bill Federer, Tim Barton, David Barton, all pushed into one at 31 years old. Yeah. And with his death came a level of clarity that just opened people's eyes in a way that they wouldn't have been opened if it wasn't for his assassination and martyrdom. I don't know what the king is up to, Alex, but Jesus is doing something powerful, beautiful, and unique through this martyr, through our friend who was murdered. There was something about who he was, what he represented, how he spoke, and how he carried himself that now atheists, libs, leftists, apolitical, I don't do politics Christians are weeping over someone that they never even met. We posted a reel on the White Rose Instagram channel on our story, Alex, of just like snapshots of hundreds and hundreds of comments. I've never gone to church before, but I'm going Sunday. I've never opened a Bible before, but I just bought one because of Charlie. Tens of thousands of people. Why? I don't know. All nature is but art unknown to thee. All chance, direction, which thou canst not see. I can't see right now every way in which our king is directing all of this, Alex. But he is directing it. And there is a great cloud of witnesses. And Charlie is looking down from that great cloud of witnesses. And I think he's smiling
more than he ever has before. And I think he's thanking Jesus. Thank you, Lord, for using this to bring people to yourself. 54,000 requests for new Turning Point chapters in the last 6 days. They only had 900, I think. I think they were on 900 campuses. I only have 5,000 donors. 54,000 new requests for Turning Point chapters? What in the world is going on? The Lion of the tribe of Judah, Aslan, is on the move. And if you've read Narnia, you know that when people hear Aslan's arrived, there's only two different responses. Either you start to piss in your pants and get really scared, or you feel a warmth fill your whole body and you get really excited because you've always wanted to join Aslan on the field of battle. This is a call to action, and it's an invitation to try to fill. I feel called to try to fill one half of one of Charlie's shoes, because let's be honest, no one can replace Charlie. Everyone's asking who's going to replace Charlie. Alex, no one can replace Charlie. Okay, like I have maybe some of the like debate and apologetics or speaking. Maybe you've got some of the history and education. Charlie had the history, the theology, the apologetics, the education, the speaking, the debate, the quick on his feet, the organizing, the political and moral philosophy, and the ground game and the fundraising. Nobody gets all of those in one body. You only get someone like Charlie maybe once every 80, once every 100 years. Okay. Yeah. But I believe that this is going to create 200,000 new little Charlies all around America and around the West. What is going on in this country? The Lion of the tribe of Judah is on the move. We need to honor Charlie. And for the pastors who couldn't even bring themselves to say his name on Sunday, when their entire congregation is feeling broken, maybe scared, maybe hopeless, maybe confused, your refusal, pastor, to shepherd your people, because saying the name of the martyr that your people want to hear you talk about might be perceived as political, and you're afraid to lose your 501c3 status, like Lot, you're the only righteous person in Sodom, and you still want to be invited to all the nice sodomite parties. You still want to rub shoulders with the political elites. You still want people to like your form of Christianity. You're a coward. You need to step down and go be a plumber or learn how to code. But don't pretend that you're a shepherd if you're not even willing to shepherd the people in your pews who just feel really confused and scared because a 31-year-old with 2 kids was murdered for believing all the same things that they believe. If that was you this last Sunday, pastor, you need to go find another job. And don't call yourself a pastor. And how dare you attack a man who had more balls, courage than you ever had in one of your testicles. Okay, go find where you buried them. I'll raise the funds to help you reattach them. But until then, don't pretend to be a pastor. Don't pretend to be a shepherd. Spurgeon said, bold-hearted men are always called mean-spirited by cowards. Those who attacked Charlie the most were the ones least likely to ever stand up in the public square and defend the things that Charlie defended so well by bringing them back to a biblical worldview. Yeah. So yeah, I miss Charlie. And I think it's just a reminder that his life and death and his work was an indictment on the entire evangelical. I guess I want to say this, Alex, shame on us. Yeah. Shame on us in the American church that it took the martyrdom and assassination of a 31-year-old to bring about more interest in spiritual and eternal things than most local pastors could do in their communities. What kind of gospel have we really been preaching?
Yeah, absolutely brilliant, Seth. Thank you for sharing that. I know we're out of time. I know you've got a lot to do. Tell us, please, how people can watch your movies. I haven't seen the second one that's about to be released, but I can tell you, folks, the 1916 Project, we watched it at our church. Not only do you need to see it, your church needs to see it, the people in your community need to see it, even the pro-abortion people need to see it. But Seth, how do people watch that? How do people get involved with The White Rose? And how do people watch your upcoming movie? When is that going to be out?
Oh, well, thanks, Alex. I didn't know you were going to ask that. I just wanted to honor Charlie today, and I don't want it to sound like that I'm trying to...
No, but Charlie believed in your ministry, Seth. What you are doing is part of what Charlie was doing. So please, he would have wanted people to watch this movie. I know he was going to be in it. So please share with people how they can see that.
Yeah, I'm finishing fundraising for it, and it should come out in June at our Last Stand Festival 2026. we're expecting around 3,000 people there next June. Charlie was supposed to be the keynote speaker, so we're going to be dedicating the film to him. But the film is called The Last Stand. It's the same name as my festival. That will be June 2026 in Southern California for both the festival and the premiere, the world premiere of the film. It's a history of Christian resistance. And, you know, we've just forgotten who we are in the American church. We've forgotten that pushing back darkness, establishing righteousness, and fighting for the least of these, even in the political square, was not a political thing. It was a Christian thing. That's what all Christians did. 1900 years of church history slaps the last 100 years of evangelicalism in the face.
Yep.
But like Aslan in the silver chair, who tells Jill Pole, listen, you're going to go down into Narnia, and I need you to find the prince and break the spell and free the land.
Excellent. Seth, thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you for your very, very powerful words, and I look forward to talking to you soon.
You too.
All right. Thank you, folks. Stay with us. We'll be back.
Your children are your legacy. Treat them as such. When you homeschool with Classical Conversations, they connect you with a local community of like-minded families who not only learn together, but do life together. They equip homeschool parents just like you, or grandparents, with the confidence to raise bright, observant students who have a lifelong love of learning. Please visit classicalconversations.com/LSM to learn more.
Welcome back to the Sentinel Report. Thank you for being with us, folks. Appreciate you staying over the break. Folks, huge announcement. Costco, huge company, just announced about a month ago that they would not be selling abortion pills. And, you know, obviously the pro-abortion zealots freaked out and, oh, you're politicizing healthcare. Blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of pressure on some of the big pharmacy chains also to stop selling these death pills. Huge victory, folks. But these victories don't just happen on their own, right? Like, Christians actually have to do stuff to make these kinds of victories possible. Joining us now to discuss is Robert Netzly. He is the CEO and founder of Inspire Investing. There were some of the key people who were pushing for this, and I consider it a huge victory for righteousness and truth. Robert Netzly, as I mentioned, CEO and founder of the Inspire Investing family of companies. He's also got a new book out, Biblically Responsible Investing on Wall Street as It Is in Heaven. Robert, welcome to the program. Thank you for joining us today.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And so you guys pressured Costco not to sell these horrific drugs. Talk to us about why you did that and how it went.
Certainly, yeah. So my firm, Inspire Investing, we're the world's largest provider of faith-based ETFs. So we manage about $3.5 billion and growing quickly as God is really just moving in the hearts of his people to align capital to support biblical values. And part of that job is to speak biblical truth to corporate power. As shareholders, we have a vote, we have an influence, and we want to use that to advance God's agenda, not the leftist agenda. So a couple years ago, about a year and a half ago, we noticed that Walgreens and CVS had jumped on the Biden bandwagon to apply for an exemption to distribute mifepristone, this abortion drug that had previously been disallowed by the FDA to be directly dispensed without a doctor involved in that. And so we saw those two pharmacies go. We said, we've got to do something about that. So we immediately reached out to Costco, a company in our portfolio at the time, and rallied the troops. So we in a short order, got 9,000 Costco members to sign a petition that they would cancel their memberships if Costco began selling this horrible drug. We, of course, had direct dialogue as investors with the executives of Costco to kind of stake out our position and told them why this, as shareholders, we believe this is a bad decision for the company. We were able to get a coalition of other investors, other faith-based investors, as well as I believe about 13 treasurers from red states to support our cause. Meanwhile, Costco was under fire from the New York City comptroller, the Democrats in Congress, and others to push this abortion drug down the throats of their customers. And I'm happy to say that after about a year and a half of grueling back and forth and really being clear and active, we got in writing from Costco that they have decided not to sell mifepristone in their over 500 pharmacies worldwide. So a huge win for biblical investors. So thankful for God's grace in this endeavor. And yeah, we're celebrating that massive win.
The Lord. That is fantastic, folks. And again, you can invest your money in a lot of places. You can go give money to BlackRock and buy, iShares ETFs, and then they can go and they can enforce the woke agenda, and they can tell them to do DEI and ESG and all that, or you could use your money more responsibly. Robert, one of the questions I get more than anything else from our viewers, from our listeners, is what do I do with my money? And I always say, I'm not a financial advisor. I actually don't know. Here's what I've done with my money. But you have a chapter in your book about God's word on investing. Like, this is something that we need to take very seriously, isn't it?
Absolutely. God's given us influence. There's $22.4 trillion of stocks, bonds, mutual fund ETFs that is walking around in the pockets of Christian church members in this country. That's 49.7% of all investment assets in this country are controlled by church members. And so then you wonder why the boardrooms are filled with all of this anti-Christian sentiment and spewing, far left ideologies and LGBT propaganda. And the sad thing is that it's Christian dollars that have elected these people to run these businesses. Why? Because we as Christians have given the money and influence that God gave to us, and we've given it to Wall Street. You mentioned some of those firms, these companies with liberal agendas. And when we do that, we put our money into American funds, BlackRock, Fidelity, Vanguard, etc. They get to vote for us. That'd be like the Republicans in this country giving their votes to Act Blue or some other, Democrat activist. I mean, that would be unthinkable. Why would you do such a thing? That's exactly what we've done. And so in my book, I'm advocating that we need to take that influence back. God gave us a stewardship responsibility, and we need to be serious about that. And that's a big problem when you think of all the influence corporate America has. So in my book, there's lots of inspiring stories. We've had many victories like Costco with the likes of Walmart and Kroger's and Exxon and Chevron and some major companies. So I go into those details. It's really inspiring to read, as well as some action steps of how Christians can now go and take back that influence and see on Wall Street as it is in heaven for God's will to be done.
Yeah, it's so important. I have watched with alarm how Christians' money in these huge companies, BlackRock, one of the chief among them, in my opinion, how our money is being used to weaponize these companies against us, against our values, against our children, against the gospel. And it's just so important. We're almost out of time, Robert. I do want to ask you, is this a biblical obligation? Like, do Christians have an obligation to take these things seriously, or is it just maybe some nice window dressing?
Great question. 1 Corinthians 10:31, whatever you do, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all to the glory of God. There are plenty of Bible verses about the immoral gains and the wages of righteousness versus unrighteousness. I think it is a moral obligation that we have in Scripture to be a wise and innocent steward. If we can't just sit here and make money from the manufacture and sale of abortion drugs, from the sale of pornography, and invest in these companies that are pushing all these woke agendas and think that we have nothing to do with that and that God doesn't care. I parse out a lot of the biblical scriptural underpinnings of these, and there is a line there that we don't want to go into a pharisaical legalism and escape from the world, but we also have to realize there's a real biblical mandate on a Christian to use what God has given you to advance kingdom purposes. And are we doing that with the money, about half the investment assets in this country that God's given us? It's a serious question. And so I encourage people to dig into that. You can find more at inspireinvesting.com. It's our website. We have a free screening tool. You can screen your portfolios for free and see what's going on, good, bad, or ugly. And of course, in my book, Biblically Responsible Investing, it's available from Canon Press right now, and would love for people to pick up a copy.
Hey, this is really, really important. Robert Netzly, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for writing this book, and thank you for helping to lead the way here. It's so desperately needed. And thank you also, of course, for joining us today.
Thank you. God bless.
God bless you too. All right, folks, take it seriously. I mean, go check out the book, Biblically Responsible Investing on Wall Street as it is in heaven. I believe we need to apply the Lordship of Jesus Christ to every area of life, and that includes our investments. So pray about this, think about it, and then if God leads you to do it, act in a way that is consistent with what he teaches us. Stay with us. We'll be right back in just a moment.
Life's just better with BNI. There's purpose, there's passion, and there's a renewed sense of inspiration and optimism with every day. After all, we were founded on the power of possibility. Nearly a decade ago, a team of world-class scientists, formulators, and industry makers brought together biology, chemistry, and technology and created something unique and life-changing, while infusing a new sense of health and hope into the world. With every product comes an empowering opportunity to take charge of our destiny. One where we feel rejuvenated and energized, and everything else around us feels lighter, brighter, and full of promise. Let's live victoriously, together.
Welcome back to the Sentinel Report. Alex Newman, your host here. Folks, you know that South Africa is near and dear to my heart. It has been for a long time, not just because I lived there, not just because I love the wonderful peoples there, but because it has incredible parallels with the history of our own country. In fact, a friend of mine wrote a whole book calling the Afrikaners the Second America, Amabulu, as they call them. And they went to Southern Africa for many of the same reasons why people came here: spread the gospel, to find freedom, to find religious liberty. And they are under incredible threat right now. Since 2012, I finally decided to take the plunge and start exposing the horrors going on in South Africa. Racist, genocidal, Marxist horror like you can't imagine. And there's a lot of different people who have a lot of different ideas for how to deal with this, how to move forward. But I had the pleasure of meeting an individual, we're going to bring him on the show in just a moment, who has an idea that I've been hearing about for a long time. And we had a nice meeting, and he shared with me some of what they were working on. And I want to share it with you because it's important. And don't think that this is just about Africa. Right. This is something that concerns all of us. I say often and regularly that what happened in South Africa is the model. It's the roadmap that they're trying to use to destroy our own country. And we have to understand what's happening there. I want to introduce Shawn Stewart. He's the president of the Transitional Authority of the United Cape States. He's got an incredible biography. He's a humanitarian. He is focused on research and development. He's a scientist. He's got decades of experience in the field of bacteria and toxins and viruses. He's an activist. He manages his own private practice in what we used to call Joburg, Johannesburg, and he's established numerous clinics across Southern and Eastern Africa. He was the chairman of Rest Haven Ministries. It's a charity caring for HIV orphans. It's a place where people could drop off babies and abandoned infants. He is an incredibly interesting man, and he's got an incredibly interesting plan for how to deal with the actual crisis situation happening in South Africa today. Shawn, welcome to the program. Dr. Shawn, it's wonderful to have you with us. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Sir Alex. It is an honor to be with you. Thanks a million to your viewers.
Really appreciate it, Shawn. So you guys have an idea to split off from the Republic of South Africa. This is obviously something that needs hours and hours of discussion, but give us the elevator pitch. Why should the Cape split off from the Republic of South Africa?
Very, very simply, there is a need to store the culture and restore the culture back to the people. So this separation of the Cape is actually a very simple process. It's a legal process that is called secession. It has been given an opportunity by the Nuremberg trials in 1950 to become the methodology of gaining land. So when South Africa was handed over to the Rainbow Nation, we then had, we went with it and followed over. And 30 years later, it's time now that we've had enough. Let us get our own land back and go back to our own territory. So internationally, we're using an international process of secession or self-determination, where you take 4 or 5 different principles, so language, culture, ethnicity, and religion, but you take them and you then go to a territory that you are the majority. And in the territory that we are going in, we are taking Afrikaans as the language, and we're going into the territory, and that is going to give us about 65% of that territory is Christian, Western thinking, very, very much old school biblical believers. And with that, we have an Afrikaans language at 68%. So we are the majority in the territory, and that gives us the opportunity to break away. And why? Because we want to preserve our culture and our heritage.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people who aren't familiar with this issue, they think South Africa is just this like wonderful rainbow nation, Mandela, evil apartheid. And they don't realize that the communists literally took over. You have like some of the top political leaders chanting about slaughtering all of the Afrikaners. I mean, and I'm grateful for Donald Trump for bringing some of this to the public spotlight. But it really is a crisis situation down there, and it cannot continue as it is. One of the things that I think is so interesting about your effort, Dr. Shawn, is that you have actually been talking with leaders of a lot of the other people groups who live in Southern Africa. And they're interested. They're concerned about the direction that this Marxist regime is going. They don't want to be on the sinking ship when it goes down. And so you've had some very interesting discussions. I don't know how much you can say publicly, but share what you can, please.
All right, I'll do that. And thank you, Sir Alex, for bringing that up. Without doubt, President Trump's maneuver that he did recently to highlight this whole situation in South Africa was absolutely genius. And in the 14 years that we've been doing this process of getting the secession ready, this has been the singular time where we have been able to effectively take the opportunity with an administration from a big brother, you guys across the pond, that is able to take us one step further and bring us to that space where we can really now leap into that secession process. And this is not a white versus black thing at all. And as you rightly said, many of the African leaders that we've spoken to, specifically the kings, who have been disenfranchised by the communist regime that is in place, at one stage, 60%, that's 60% of our cabinet was communist. Now, you must understand what that means. It's not a small number of that mindset in a supposedly Christian country. And a lot of our leaders have had enough. The kings themselves have been dispossessed. The land is being dispossessed. The mineral rights are being dispossessed. I mean, I think you mentioned it once, Alex, that we are a microcosm of what is happening to the US and certainly to the rest of the West. I mean, the anomalies that South Africa has that plays one step ahead of the US is phenomenal. I mean, I'll give you just one typical example. The 2019, we had an election here in South Africa. And the ANC was losing, going down, down, down. And suddenly, for some other unknown reason, the voting stopped. All the counting stopped. And 8.5 hours later, after things had happened, the voting starts and the trajectory of the ANC changes. And suddenly, they have a situation where they take 52% of Johannesburg, the financial capital of the country. A very, very similar thing happens in 2020. The trajectory for the Democrat is going down. All of a sudden, there's a halt for whatever reason. And when the voting comes back, the trajectory changes and the Democrats go up again. This is something that is copy and paste, and there's many of these things. So the African leaders themselves are also seeing this, and they are saying there's no ways that they are going to be left behind. And in our negotiations, we have amassed a huge amount of support from the African leaders, tribal leaders, to go with us, Alex. It's been phenomenal. But I can't say too much. I'd love to, but I want to just keep that under wraps. We are not required by law to arm our enemies, sir.
Amen. Brilliant. And this is something that historically, this would not be unique, right? Throughout the history of the Afrikaner people and Southern Africa, there have been various alliances. And of course, Afrikaners have allied with Zulus. And it's just been an incredible history. It's a rich history. And Dr. Shawn, I definitely want to get you back. I do regard what's happening in South Africa as one of the most important things happening in the world. And not just because it's so relevant to what's happening in the United States, because it's so relevant to the spread of the gospel, the spread of the Bible and biblical wisdom around the world. So there's much more we need to discuss, and I definitely want to get you back on as time goes on. In the meantime, is there a way people can learn more? Do you guys have a website, a social media account, Dr. Stewart, where people can follow you?
Absolutely. It's called the UnitedCapeStates.org. www.unitedcapestates.org or info@unitedcapestates.org, and they can get a whole lot of stuff. There's a book that can be downloaded free of charge. We've got all the information, lots of videos that can be done, and just a very light level, just read us to see exactly what we are doing. Absolutely.
Excellent. I'm really looking forward to talking with you more, Dr. Stewart. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for joining us on the program today, and we'll talk again very soon.
God bless you, brother. Thank you for the opportunity, and thanks to your listeners.
God bless you too. Thank you so much. All right, folks. I'm telling you, this is a really, really significant issue. So go check out that website and recognize, folks, that this is not just like so many other things that our government likes to get involved in. This is not just some problem on the other side of the world. This is something with a direct bearing on our own country, on our own liberties, and of course on the propagation of the gospel and the Great Commission. It's an important issue, and I encourage you to pay attention. Stay with us. We're going to be back in just a moment here on the Sentinel Report.
In 1776, a nation was born, forged in the crucible of revolution. Brave men and women stood together fighting for freedom, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. Introducing Patriot Mobile, the wireless carrier that stands with you. We are committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile. For free activation, use promo code Newman.
Well, that's all we have time for today, folks. But thank you for tuning in. Get over to libertysentinel.org, libertysentinel.org. Sign up for our free newsletter. Check out our wonderful sponsors who make this show possible. If you feel inclined to support the work we do, there's a little donate button there and so much more. Thank you once again for tuning in. We really appreciate you. Thanks for all you do for God and our country. Till next time, we appreciate you. God bless you all.